All right, guys. Good morning, or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Um, so I've been doing this with my AP World History kids once in a while. When we don't get through something in a lesson, I just want to kind of finish up some things and maybe explain it a little better. The video will take about 10 to 12 minutes. It won't be long. I definitely advise you to have like a little, if you want to have a little notebook next to you or something. I don't know. But I can't see you, so do whatever you got to do. There might be some extra credit little thing in the middle of here. So you have to kind of watch it all the way through to see if you can get the extra credit. So I just think you should watch the whole thing. It's about the cause of World War One, and I'm just going to kind of explain some things that we ran through pretty quickly yesterday. So, all right. So as you can see on the screen right now, this is the long term cause of World War One, which is mania, which we've done a few times. And you should know what these are by this point, right? Just key to this is that this is the historical circumstances that lead to the war. So this is the tension that starts World War One. So keep that in mind, because that's going to definitely be helpful in terms of, maybe an enduring issues essay or in terms of SRQ or just answering multiple choice questions. So these five things. The only thing we didn't really spend that much time on is anarchy, which is that peacekeeping organization thing. It's not that important for World War One. Just be aware of that's that last A. Okay, so these are the long-term causes. Alone, they're just tension. They don't do anything, but there's going to be a spark, obviously, that's going to cause World War One to begin, and that spark is going to be the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand by Gabriel Princip, which we took notes on yesterday, but I feel like we kind of did it quickly. So I want to just make sure we understand. So the area of the world that we're looking at, the area of Europe that we're looking at, is the Balkan region, which is like right here, right this where you see Serbia and those places. It's split between two empires: the Ottoman Empire, which is dying, which we'll get into after midterms, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is kind of like struggling. Right, nationalism does two things: one, it can bring people together, and it can break up empires. And in this case, different groups that were controlled by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they don't want to be ruled by an Austrian king anymore. They want to govern themselves. That's that whole idea of self-determination that we talked about. And one of these groups are the Slavic people who reside in the Balkans, right? The Balkans are made up of this ethnicity, which is the Slavic people. So anyway, so back to this whole thing. So Austria is kind of falling apart because of nationalist movements from within. People want to govern themselves. That concept of self-determination again. I'm going to say it again. It's an important term to know. So during the late 1800s, a series of wars kind of occur in the Balkan region, right? And they're wars of independence. And a couple things kind of happen. Like there's a couple pieces that break away. Like Greece is able to be independent. They fight against the Ottomans. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't really need to know that much about, but you just got to know that there's a lot of tension in this area because these people want to govern themselves. So it's referred to as the powder keg of Europe. And what we mean by that is that it's, if you imagine a keg that's filled or a barrel that's filled up with gunpowder, that's what we're kind of referring to here. And the reason why it's called a powder keg, and there's a lot of any situation when there's a lot of tension, they use that phrase. Powder keg means that at any moment things could just get out of control and explode. And all it takes is the spark to allow this. So anyway, so back to the Balkans. So the Balkans are this powder keg, and it revolves around this idea of what's called Pan-Slavism. Pan-Slavism means it's Slavic nationalism. It's this idea that the Slavic people no longer want to be governed by a foreign empire. They want to govern themselves, which is kind of easy to remember, right? Pan-Slavism. Whenever you see the prefix pan, that means like together. Okay, anyway. So they want to govern themselves, and the Austro-Hungarians don't want to really let them go. And just to simplify things, on July 28th, 1914, Archduke Ferdinand is going to drive through the city of Sarajevo, which is located in Bosnia, on Serbian Nationalist Day, or Independence Day rather. And he drives through, and he's shot by Gabriel Princip, who is a member of a group called the Black Hand. The Black Hand is a nationalist terrorist organization, and they are only targeting really the Archduke and his wife. Now, to be an Archduke means you're heir to the throne, which means that like you're eventually going to be the king of this massive empire. So by killing the Archduke, you're really making a statement as the Slavic people to do something like this, okay? Now, the way that this all kind of breaks down is once the assassination occurs, it begins a chain of events that is really referred to as the chain reaction. Because things start to kind of fall apart very quickly. And you can see here, this cartoon kind of shows you the powder keg. So if you get an opportunity, look at this a little bit more closely. You have access to this. You can stop the video whenever you want. So once the assassination occurs, it turns into a chain reaction of events. And I'll show you the alliance map because I think that's the best way to kind of do it. Ignore Italy in this case because Italy is out of the picture. They switch sides immediately and they move on. But the part that you have to kind of realize is that by Gabriele Princip killing the Archduke, it's really like, it's like killing the President of the United States. It's a big deal. And when the Archduke is assassinated, the Austrian Empire obviously has to do something. So quickly there's a negotiation that goes on, and Austria issues an ultimatum. An ultimatum means like either you do this or else. And the ultimatum to Serbia is they agree to everything except for the idea of being able to take part in the trial of Gabriele Princip. And as a result of that, Austria is like, well, you know, we're not going to have this. And they begin to mobilize their troops. They're like, we're going to go to war if you don't do this. And Serbia does not back down. So Austria begins to mobilize their troops. At the same time, the Russians have a very key allegiance with the Serbian people. And the reason for that is because they're Slavic. So they kind of side with them, and there's a connection with geography, and you could see the proximity to the Balkan Peninsula, but they definitely have a relationship. So Russia immediately gets their troops mobilizing also. Mobilizing means they just start moving them closer to the borders. So Austria starts moving their troops closer to the border. Russia starts moving their troops close to the border, and now they're kind of on the brink. At the same time, because Austria and Germany are allies, Germany is also going to begin to mobilize their troops. They're going to mobilize them on what's called the Western Front. The Western Front is right here, and the Eastern Front against Russia. And this, of course, once you start moving your troops and you start getting into position, you're on the verge of war. And it's really hard to kind of stop it at that point. In August of 1914, the Germans take the first action, and that's an important thing to remember. They're the ones who shoot the first bullet, and they invade neutral Belgium. All right, neutral Belgium is right here, and they head into France, and they very quickly take over France. Now, because Germany takes action against France, they also decide to take action against Russia, and by doing that, now Russia's involved in the war. So now you have these three pieces are all involved in the war, and of course, Austria, who is the ally of Germany. Now that Germany's involved, now Austria-Hungary has to get involved as well. So now you got all of these pieces in. The last one to fall is going to be the British. And the British are going to come in last. And they're like, well, we got to defend neutral Belgium. So they're going to get in on the Ally side. And then that's the beginning of World War I. So the issue becomes who's really to blame for the start of this war. And I'm hoping that in history you guys realize they're all to blame. They could have done things to prevent the war. But at that moment in time, and this is what's very important, because Germany takes the first physical action, Germany is to blame for the start of World War I. That's what they thought at that moment. And that's an important thing to remember, that blaming of Germany. When we know in history, really, they're all to blame, right? And if we look at this cartoon, and we'll do this again on Monday, especially this cartoon. Oh, by the way, this is kind of a cool cartoon. I showed this to my 6th period. And it's got, you know, like, you have Serbia here, and then you got Austria-Hungary, and then you got the Russians, and then you got the Germans, and then you got, you know, and the Americans are last kind of watching in the background. And this is kind of like that chain reaction. So it's a good cartoon to kind of be familiar with, okay? So take a minute, look at it, or pause, do whatever you got to do. So this is the famous cartoon that we're going to look at on Monday. We'll start this with the do now, and it's this idea of who's to blame for the war. So definitely take a second, pause the video, and look at this cartoon. This is one of those really famous cartoons, political cartoons from World War I that shows up a lot. Pay close attention to what's going on back here, right? And we'll get into this again on Monday, like I said. All right, so this was a quick video. Just keep in mind just what the long-term cause is, what that spark is, why it happens, and then how it leads to a chain reaction. And remember, these long-term causes of World War I are essentially going to be the same long-term causes as we see for World War II. We're just going to add a couple of things here. And just keep that in mind. All right? So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. A little extra credit thing, I guess. I don't know. What can we say here? I don't know. Can you see me? You can see me. So what is a good extra credit? I don't know. I guess I don't have one. But I don't know. The fact that I'm sitting here thinking about what the extra credit is on the end of the video. is a pretty good idea. But have a good weekend, and I will speak to you guys on Monday.